Hello. Today we're going to talk about the steps for simplifying radicals. Radicals that are in simplest form are not divisible by any perfect square other than 1, do not have a fraction under the radical, and do not have a radical in the denominator. We're actually just going to focus on are not divisible by any perfect square other than 1. Here's a list of perfect squares. In these perfect squares, you'll see 5 squared equals 25. So if we need to know the square root of 49, well, that's equal to 7. Square root of 121, right up here, equal to 11. So we're going to use this perfect square list to help us figure out simplifying radicals. So our first example is square root of 20. You want to figure out where square root of 20, if it's in this list, where it is not, but it would be located between 16 and 25. So the square root of 20 here is going to only be divisible by possibly 16, 9, or 4. If it's not divisible by any of those, then we can't simplify it. We're going to make a factor tree. And the square root of 20, I know, is divisible by 4. So we're going to write that as divisible by the square root of 4. Square root of 4 goes into square root of 20, square root of 5 times. We know that the square root of 4 is 2, so I'm going to simplify the square root of 4. The square root of 5, however, is not in this list, and no perfect square on this list is also a factor of 5. So I cannot simplify square root of 5. So I just bring that down. Originally, square root of 4 multiplied by square root of 5 equals square root of 20. So our answer is 2 multiplied by square root of 5. So now let's try square root of 72. So I'm going to start out with my factor tree. And I need to figure out a perfect square that divides into 72. Most people will go with 9 first. So we'll go ahead and choose 9. Now 9 is not the only perfect square that goes into 72, so there's not necessarily a wrong answer here as long as it divides evenly. 9 goes into 72 8 times, so square root of 8. And the square root of 9 simplifies to 3. Square root of 8, however, not on this list up here, but it is divisible by 4. So square root of 8 is not simplified yet. So we are going to do another step. We're going to add on to our factor tree. And square root of 8 becomes the square root of 4 multiplied by the square root of 2. So I'm going to take the square root of 4 and get 2. Now I'm left with square root of 2, and that's not on this list above. 2 cannot be simplified any further, so square root of 2 is simplest form. Now to write this full answer, since these are all factors, that means we multiply them together, I'm going to actually multiply all of the factors that I have in the answer. So I'm going to be multiplying 3 times 2 times square root of 2. Which is 6 square root of 2. Square root of 9 is not the only perfect square that goes into 72. So I'm going to show you a shorter way of getting the answer. If you pick the largest perfect square that divides evenly into 72, you will have fewer steps. So 72 is divisible by the square root of 36. and that goes in square root 2 times. Square root of 36 is 6. Square root of 2 is simplified. And there's your final answer. Same answer, fewer steps. One last example, square root of 405. So I'm going to choose from my list a perfect square that goes into 405. This is a bigger number. We might not know off the top of our head what goes into 405, so we can either use our calculator and just start dividing things, or we can use dividing shortcuts. Adding 4 plus 0 plus 5 gives me a total of 9. And if all the digits add up to be 9, then it is divisible by 9. So I'm going to go ahead and divide 405 by 9. Perfect square. Goes in 45 times. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 45, I'm going to check my list, is still divisible by 9. So I do have to break this down a little bit further. Square root of 9 times square root of 5. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 5 is simplified. So we have 3 times 3 square root of 5, or 9 square root of 5. So if we had chosen the biggest perfect square that went into 405 right away, we would have fewer steps. 405 is divisible by the square root of 81. 81 goes into it 5 times. Square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 5 cannot be simplified. And we have our final answer. To summarize, radicals that are in simplest form are not divisible by any perfect square other than 1. So if you can divide out that perfect square, you need to.